Hello, and I'm Mr.C, and today we're going to be looking at how we can do some coding in Year 3. Today is our Lesson 1 of our Scratch 3 series. Now, in today's lesson, we're going to help you understand the Scratch interface, so understand all the little bits and bobs that you'll need to be able to start programming in Scratch. And the second thing, we're going to aim to make a sprite move using an input. So, first things first, let's make sure that we understand some of that vocabulary. So I said we're going to make a sprite move. Well, a sprite is actually a character in a computer game. And we're also going to be using an input. So this is something that we can plug into the computer, a button pressed or a sound. It's a trigger of some kind. Okay. There's a couple of other words that will come up today. So we're going to be doing some computer coding. We're writing some instructions for computers. Okay. And we'll also explain what a line of code is, which is an individual instruction. And sprites have a particular script, like somebody on stage would. Okay, a character on stage would have a script to read. And it's the same in computers and computer games. So a sprite will have a set of instructions that they need to follow in a particular order. So this is our Scratch 3 interface. It is all web-based and is accessible through iOS devices as well as Windows devices and Android devices. So what you need to do is go to this web address, scratch.mit.edu, okay? And if you just click on Create, you don't need to sign in to be able to create your own computer programs. You can just get started straight away. It is helpful to join and sign in because then it automatically saves all your work. Let's just have a look around at the different spaces that we've got then. This space is called the stage, and this is where all the action takes place. So this is where your computer program will actually happen. And this is Scratch. Okay, this is Scratch, the little cat here. And here's a sprite. Okay. Now all the sprites and objects that I've got will be shown down here. So I can see that at the moment, Scratch is called Sprite 1. Okay, and I've got him selected. So that's the little space that's going to all the action is going to take place, and that is the sprite we've got. Okay. Now there's a blank space here. Now this space is where I put all my lines of code, all my instructions, so that I can program Scratch and make a computer program. I've also got all of these lines of code here. Okay. So they look like little jigsaw puzzles, and they all fit together. Okay. And along the sidebar, I've got different tabs, motion, looks, all sorts of different things along there. Okay, we'll come to those in a moment. Now, if we look up here, I've got a stop and I've got a go button. Now, if I press the go button, it starts my program. So if I click on that now, nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is because I've not told my computer to do anything. Okay, and despite popular opinion, computers are actually stupid because they can't do anything that they've not been told to do. So somewhere along the line must have written a program, written that code to make a computer do what it is doing for you right now. Okay. Now these programs can be incredibly complex, and there have been lots and lots and lots of layers of programming that go into a computer doing a certain thing, but someone somewhere along the line has to have created a set of instructions for them to follow. At the moment, with Scratch, I've not given them any instructions at all. So I'm going to do that now. My job is to try and make him move. So I could just go, oh, let's move 10. The problem is I need to say when he wants to move 10. Do I want him to move 10 every few seconds? Do I want him to move 10 when I press a button? Do I want him to move 10 when I clap my hands? Do I want him to move 10 when he comes into contact with something? I've got to think, when do I want him to move? And therefore, what are you going to do when that happens? Now, what I'm going to click on is I'm going to click on events, okay? Because when I click on events, it shows me all of these when conditions. So when something happens, I want something else to happen. So when, I could just say, when I click on the green flag, then move 10. And you can see he is moving a little bit along. Now I could just change that a little bit, say I can move him 20 every time I click on the green flag. But this is a fairly underwhelming computer program at the moment, isn't it? When I click on the green flag, it's moving. Brilliant. Maybe the first step would be to try and have better control. So what sorts of things could I do? Instead of clicking on the green flag, maybe I could use a different input, such as the keyboard that I've got or the mouse that I've got. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to choose something else. When I press a button, now we're talking. When I press a button, and I'm going to choose, when I press the right arrow, I'm going to move, and we'll go back to 10 again, okay? So now when I press the right arrow, he's moving 10, okay? So what I can do is then think, oh, if I press the left arrow, maybe I could also get him to move. So when I move the left arrow, I'm going back to motion. So all of these blue blocks are motion. It tells us all about movement. I'm going to do the same. Now, let's see if you can see what the problem is. I'm pressing the right key now, pressing the left key now, pressing the right key now, pressing the left key now. What's the problem? Well, you're right. At the moment, I've pressed the right arrow and I've pressed the left arrow, but they're moving the same way. Because at the moment, I've not told Scratch which direction to move. I've just said move. I've not said which direction, so he's just going to carry on moving in the same direction he was going. Okay, because as we've said, computers are stupid and they just carry on doing exactly what they're told to do. So I need to be really specific in my instructions. So I'm going to tell Scratch now what direction I want him to point in. Okay, so let's have a look. Point in direction. This looks useful. So I'm going to click and drag this. I'm on the motion tab up there. Click and drag this just to here. Okay, and I'll just click on this little button here and it'll tell me which way I want him to point. So the right arrow, I'm pointing in direction 90 degrees. Okay, lovely. Okay, that looks good. And if I get point in direction again, for the left arrow key, I'm going to click on here, and I don't want him to point that way. I think I'm going to turn it all the way around to minus 90 degrees, because of course minus 90 is actually the opposite of 90, isn't it? So we've got minus 90 degrees. Okay, so let's just have a look at that now. So press the right arrow, press the left arrow, and the right arrow, and the left arrow. So it is working. He's going upside down, but it is working. Okay, so my next step is I'm now going to copy and paste these blocks of code, okay, these blocks of code to make him go up and make him go down as well. So I've got more control. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to duplicate, put that there, and I'm just going to switch this around to being the ups instruction. So when I use an input to tell him to go up, then I want him to move up. So I'm going to click up arrow, change the input there, and the movement is going to point up. There we go, to 0 degrees, and he's still moving 10. So now I press up, he's going up, I can go right and I can go left. And you've guessed it, the last thing I want to do is duplicate this and then go down. So down, make sure it's really easy to forget to, if you're duplicating things, to just change one of those things. So I've changed the input, but I need to change the direction as well. Okay, so I'm going to now point down. You, of course, could have buttons going in different directions. You can choose, any amount of degrees if you so wish on the buttons that you create. So let's just have a look now. I've got my scripts on the character. Here we go. They tell us actually that all these inputs are telling the character, the sprite, how to move. So I can go down, go right, I can go left, and I can go up. So our first challenge, if we just go and have a look, this is your first challenge to do. Your first task is to try and make your character put the inputs here, get some movement controls for your sprite, and I'd like to be able to move your character to all the 4 corners of the stage. Okay. If you'd like to do it in full screen, you can click on this full screen button here, or you can do it as that. But you have a go at programming your character, your sprite, so that they can move to the 4 corners of the screen. That's your first challenge. Okay. So let's just have a look at some of the challenges that we've got today, our tasks today. So we want to make a sprite move to all the 4 corners of the screen. Hopefully we're getting on to doing that. We want to be able to animate your character so that it cycles between costumes. We're going to look at that in a moment. Control pen commands using an input. So we're going to look at that next as well. And the extra challenge, which you can be thinking about already, if you think, I've really got this, is thinking, are there other ways that we could think of making the sprite move? Because there are, but can you figure them out? So we'll have a look at those. So the next task we were going to look at was trying to get the character to cycle through costumes when I press an input and get my character to move. So at the moment, the cat does look a little bit odd, doesn't it, when it moves around. Now, on Scratch, someone has already put two different pictures for the costumes on Scratch, this sprite here, so that one looks like he's got his legs outstretched and the other one looks like he's in the process of running. So there's two images, and when we jump between those two really quickly, then it looks like an animation. It's being animated. What we need to do is give an instruction, okay, put a line of code somewhere that says, when you do this, I would like you to change costume. Okay, so have a think now. When do we want Scratch to change costume? Because we don't want him to do it all the time. When do we want him to change the costume? Have a think. So let's have a look. I'm going to, here are the costumes. I've clicked on the costume tab. There's the code. Click on the costume tabs. There's the second costume. There's the first costume. We want to cycle between them. Okay, so you can see what costumes we've got. I'm going to click on code again. And all of the ways that I can manipulate that with code appear on this looks tab, this purple one. Okay, this purple one here. Okay, so I can switch to a particular costume, or I can cycle to the next costume, and I'm going to choose that one. And just to keep things simple, I'm going to add this line of code to each of these blocks here. Okay, so let's just go over what it's going to say. A computer actions a script in order. It has an order. So first comes the input. When the right arrow is pressed, Scratch is going to point 90 degrees, which is turning right, and move 10 steps. Then change the costume. So let's look at that. When I press the right key, there we go. So when I press the button, the computer is going to action that block of code, and at the end of that block of code, in order, at the end it's going to say next costume. So I'm just going to change that, make sure I add that to each of my coding blocks. So now, it does look a bit funny, it's true, but it looks a little bit like he's scrabbling around the screen, look, when I use my inputs. I'm using the arrow keys as inputs. Now, you could have used different keys as inputs if you wanted to. Whee! Okay. Enough. And you can also, if you want a little bit more space to play, I can just change the size of my character here. Oh, that's a bit too small. So let's try 25%. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So I've got a really tiny Scratch. Okay. Whee! Okay. So I'm going to stop playing now. I'm going to move to the next challenge. Now we said we want to be able to use pen tools. So the pen tools in Scratch, you've got to imagine that if I were to give my sprite a pen and ask them to put the pen down on the ground. So if you imagine yourself in a room, okay, and I asked you to put a pen down on the ground with a nib facing the ground, okay, like this, and then I were to told you to move about, okay, what would happen? Okay, entirely, exactly that would happen is you'd end up with lots and lots of scribbles on the floor, and that's what's going to happen with our little program here. So I'm going to click on Add Extension because it won't always be there, and then I need to click on Pen. Okay, so this gives me the pen controls. Lots of different controls. Hopefully we'll explore these as we go, but I've got my pen controls here, and I'm then going to click on Pen Down. Okay, so I'm going to have pen down and pen up. Okay, these are the most important controls that we will go into. So I'm going to then need to say to Scratch, when do I want the pen to be put down? Okay, I'm going to use a different key. So I'm going to say when I press space, I want you to put the pen down. And when I press, I'm going to change that to a different key. When I press A, I want you to put the pen up. So now what we have is when I press space, oh, I click on run my program. I'm going to press space, and look, he's leaving a little trail because he's got the pen down. Okay, and when I press A, it takes the pen off. Okay, space, pen down, A, pen off. There we go. So have a go at including that. Now you can really play around with lots of these pen tools by using different inputs for different things. So I could then have, for example, after a time you'll end up with a screen that's full of stuff. So when I press C, I'm going to click on pen, and I'm going to clear. Let's have a look. Where does it say clear? Oh, erase all. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to press C. I want to erase all. So now I can create little pictures. So you could do have a go at drawing a little house. Okay, little house. Not a great house, but a house nonetheless. And then you can clear with the C button. Okay, and you can also, what I'd like you to do is then play around with these pen tools, have different inputs. So remember, if you're doing a new one, create a new input here. Okay, create a new input here. I can always scroll down if I need more space. I'm going down to pen, and I can change the pen size or change the pen color. You know, I'm going to change the pen size. And what would be good is actually when I press the number 1, I can then change pen size to 1. And if I press number 6, I'm going to change the pen size to 6. So I can actually do lots of different inputs there. So let's just try that. I'm going to press 6, and there we go. I've got the pen size that's changed to 6. Okay. Now the last thing that I'm going to just show you, okay, is we said, are there different ways? The extra challenge was thinking of different ways of moving your sprite. Okay, so there are different ways of moving your sprite. That's one way. I'm going to show you another one. So let's get rid of the down arrow. Okay, it could be that if I'm still using inputs, okay, I could say when I press the down arrow, there's different ways. What I'm saying is there's different ways of solving the same problem in coding, and this is what's really exciting and quite fun and creative about it. When I press the down arrow, okay, instead of saying I'd like you to point down and then move 10, what I could do instead is I'm getting my maths head on now, and say if I imagine this space as a graph, okay, it's a graph, and in year 3 you probably have done graphs where you've had to do translations of shapes and things on a graph that's got X and Y axis, and if you add 2 to a location, add 2 to a shape on a graph, then you need to go up or across depending on which axis it is, and if you take away, if you subtract 2, you would need to go down or back. And you can use the same thing in computer programming. So like with coordinates, okay, sort of the sprite always has a coordinate on this grid, on this stage, okay, and I can change the coordinates. So another way I could do it is I could change, when I press the down arrow, I could just change its position. Oh, I've clicked on the wrong one, haven't I? Its position on the y-axis. So I could change the y-axis, okay? If you remember from your maths work, the x-axis goes along this way and the y-axis goes up and down. So I want the down arrow to tell the sprite to go down. So I'm going to change the y-axis position by -10. So let's imagine a y-axis that goes up to 100. Let's say Scratch was at 100. If I want to do -10, it's going to go 10 down on that scale. -10, 10 down again, 10 down, 10 down again. Okay, so let's just check that works. Okay, I'm going to press the down arrow. So it's accomplishing the same thing, but in a different way. Okay, and if you whiz through the first bit, what's elegant about this solution, and this is what people are always looking for in computer coding, is you see how this accomplishes the same thing, but it's only got 2 lines, so it's more efficient. So if I was changing that to the right arrow, let's get rid of that stuff there, I could then go change the Y by -10 as well. Now there are other ways that you could get your character to move. Maybe as an extension you could have your character always moving forwards, and then when you press certain arrow keys then it tilts them or turns them one way or the other. There are lots of different ways that you can program your Scratch. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to, off you go, have a go, make sure that you've got your sprite moving, that you've used the different inputs to program your pen controls like I have here. Okay, and you can explore all of them. Can you make a picture of a house, for example, or a tree? Okay, and what controls and inputs and outputs are going to help you accomplish that goal? Well, that's it from me. That's our first lesson in Scratch. I hope you get on well, and we'll be exploring our next step in our next lesson. So, see you later, folks.